Let's officially call the meeting to order. We're actually going to start a little bit out of order. I'm going to ask that we move a few agenda items so that we can get to some things while Kathleen Degnan, the city solicitor, is able to join us between now and 6:30. So I'm going to name a, do we have to motion just to move things out of order?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
I would like to move some pieces of item number 7 forward so that we can address some of these pieces while Kathleen is here. So agenda item 7 says contract and restrictions updates from the city solicitor. And there's a lot of projects, right? Like when Amy and I met to go through this, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. We have 18 projects that are in motion, right? And a few have ended, but a lot haven't, right? Or have just started to kick off, actually. So there's a lot going on. And of course, we've had a lot of turnover and craziness in the legal department. So we've been lucky to have Kathy come on and also Amy step up in some awesome ways to try to move us forward. So I know there are a few things, Kathy, that are really specific to you.
Yes.
So which piece would you like to talk about first, Kathy?
Well, there were a lot. Amy did send me the attachments, and I can tell you that the grant agreements for the Scott Tower Revitalization Phase 1, the Library Commons Phase 2, the Fire Truck Engine 9 Restoration Project. I have reviewed all those agreements, and I'm going to get them signed because I saw no legal issue with them. So if there's a factual one, you might want to talk about it. But legally, it's not a problem. However, the Scott Town. Oh, let me go back.
Just 1 minute, Kathy, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So Amy was able to take some pieces that had been started by other members of the law department, and then some she was able to work on from previous templates. And we're going to get to another agenda item later on where we're going to look at creating a contract subcommittee so that we don't have to go line by line through all the contracts here in the general meetings. So our hope is that we're going to have contracts move to that committee to be vetted, and then we'll have them signed by everyone.
Oh, thank you for that. Just to let you know, the Jackson Street grant agreement, as you know, has been signed. I have done the affordable housing restriction. I want to get it to Amy Giroux. I was hoping she might be present tonight. But as you know, it's affordable housing restriction, and as we last discussed, it's going to be in the form of a deed rider. So that can actually hang on a little bit because we don't know who's going to be the grantee. We don't know who's going to buy these homes, but we still have to have them in place. So what I have is a template for that. So having said that, I can see that the Library Commons Phase 2 needs an affordable housing restriction, which I will have because I've got a template now. And the Scott Tower Revitalization, that needs a conservation restriction, and which I will draft. And the Fire Truck Engine 9, that needs a historic preservation restriction, from what I can tell. I just happened to look.
The fire truck actually doesn't, and we did vote on it as a committee because it's not required if it is a city property, but also if it is a mobile artifact, effectively.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm just looking at condition restrictions. So it indicates that the recipient agrees to execute the proposed project in its entirety with U.S. Secretary of Interior standards for historic rehabilitation. Now, it doesn't say that actually has to have, I mean, it's listed under restriction, but I suppose given what you're telling me, I guess that can stay the way it is. Because it's a mobile project. If you've discussed this already and you're of the opinion that a historic restriction isn't required, then okay. I don't know. We can submit this contract the way it is. I don't know if the recipient has an issue, they will tell us, I guess. So, but that's good to know. So the two projects that I had mentioned, I do have to get the affordable housing restriction for the library commons. That indicates that you have to have one. And the Scott Tower, I also saw that in the restriction. And I'm just going to double check here because I like how it's all restrictions. Yeah. Recipients agree to be bound by a permanent conservation restriction approved by the Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. And that's perfect. That's who do it. So that's good. So those documents, the big push I had was the affordable housing restriction. I wanted to make sure that we got that done because it's important. Also the MIFA, I think as Amy, we had a little bit of email going back and forth. And bottom line is, as this body knows, they have to get the funding by next month. I think it's December 1st, if I remember correctly.
They already notified us that they're not going to have that funding.
Okay, so that's been rescinded. That's gonna be rescinded. Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, that's good to know. So let me just make sure. With respect to, and I think that's why Stephen Huntley is here. I have gotten some emails from Ellen Fryman. And this is on the just double check. Yeah, the 337 Chestnut Street. That grant agreement, as I think you may already know, they're looking for an extension of the construction completion date, 50%. I think you probably have all seen this. Am I right?
Stephen, do you want to take a minute to sort of explain why you're asking for, this is a second request for extension, yes? For 6 months?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
So the first request, we came in through the traditional application process, which was late winter, early spring. I remember it being cold initially and then summer. And so we didn't come through the emergency process. So that resulted in our timeline being a little bit skewed the first time. So we asked for a request just to get to the point to see if we were awarded the money. This past summer, we were awarded the financing. It's not just fine. We were awarded the money. I guess financing is the right word. It isn't all loans, but we were awarded the grants and loans for the project to advance. So now we have a clear idea of when we're going to close all the state and federal financing, when construction's going to start. And by clear, I mean it's going to start this spring. We don't have an actual date yet. We're going out to bid as we speak to get the final numbers and to advance it. So every other request for extension was a little bit squishy, like we won't know how the funding went until this date. So can we extend it to this date? And we do know how the funding went. We were awarded the money. So now we're asking for this final extension with the idea that we are going to start construction this spring.
Well, that's really great news, Stephen.
Would that be, I'm sorry, do you mind if can I ask a quick question? Would
Sure.
that be for both projects, Stephen?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, Amy, because the building itself had a historic, but also a housing component, because it's both.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's
Yes, I
two
remember
separate
that.
buildings, though. They're two separate buildings.
It's two separate buildings, but it's one project. That's right.
Right.
Yeah, I found that to be a little bit unusual to have an affordable housing restriction and a conservation restriction on the same. I'm sorry. Yes, on the same property, the same project. However, what I indicated, and this was my opinion, what I indicated to Ellen is my concern. I'm thinking that because it's already been extended once, and we're going into a new fiscal year, that the council should probably this extension request should probably go before the city council. That's what I told Ellen Fryman. So
Yes.
I'm not
Michael,
sure.
Is that what you were going to ask? You had your hand up. Michael, is that what you were going to say, or you had your hand up?
No, something far more basic. Madam Chairman, can you just recall what two buildings are these with the location and the nature
I can
of
tell
that?
you if you'd like.
These are on Chestnut Street.
One is 348 Chestnut Street, and that's historic. And then 337 Chestnut Street is for housing. They're two separate properties.
Right.
But when they applied with it, they applied with one application. but it's two separate properties.
Right.
So
Gotcha.
50,000 for each one.
Perfect.
Okay, so effectively, this means that we have to take a vote in order to determine if our committee is willing to bring this to the city council for the second extension. And you're sure that 6 months is enough? Because the thing I think that we've discovered is like not wanting to do it again could be a good thing. So are you sure about 6 months, or is 8 months better, or 9 months, or longer?
Good question.
It's a great question. We sat down a month or so ago, probably 2 months ago. I guess it was early September. We sat down with everybody and said, "This is what's comfortable." It was right after we got our last funding award, so it was late August. We said 6 months will get us there. Since then, the supply chain hasn't done us any favors. So that'd be my only concern, is that we order appliances, and 10 months later, they're not delivered or something crazy like that. And it feels crazy, but it's becoming a new normal. So,
yeah. So would you feel more comfortable if we requested a year extension just to make sure that we're not doing this again?
I would love that. I really, felt bad asking for a second extension. So I was really trying to be as ambitious as we could, and maybe it was realistic for the timeline. But now again, our contractors who were walking through the building are saying, the second we get notice of award here, we're going to need to put in an order for appliances, and we should really think about ordering light fixtures and some of the plumbing fixtures that we need, because there's limitations on what the supply houses will sell them every day. And so, I'm sorry. That's a long-winded answer of saying yes, a year would be terrific.
Okay. Any other further discussion before we move to a vote?
I think Mike had his hand raised.
No, Madam Chairman, I was just going to vote or.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yes, thank you. I was going to make a motion to approve a 1-year extension to the project on both projects on Chestnut Street.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. I think that's unanimous. Amy, you had a question, or just a
Well,
point of order?
It's not about that, but since Kathleen was sharing, I did have a question or about what something Kathleen said. Just you mentioned the affordable housing restriction for Jackson Street, and I understand what you mean about how that might happen with a closing. However, one big question I had is you said that the grantees, and what confused me about this is that the grantee really is not the future tenants, but it's the I'm losing my train of thought here. It's the Habitat for Humanity that is the grant recipient. So
Okay.
what I'm unclear on is whether an affordable housing, it seems like the restriction is on the grant, the Habitat for Humanity. That's what I'm asking.
I get what you're saying. The word grantee is a real estate term. When you sell property, okay, the grantor is the person that's selling, the grantee is the person that's getting. You also have heard them as buyer and seller. I think you're thinking, the grant people are the grantees, the ones who
No,
apply for the
actually,
grant.
that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to the fact that it sounds like there will be restrictions, affordable housing restrictions on the future owners of these houses. But what I thought that the affordable housing restriction involves is the Habitat for Humanity being restricted. That's my question.
Everybody, everyone, this is a multifaceted, and the fact that there's an application with CPA with 2 applicants makes it more interesting. But the people that are involved here, and it's the person that buys it is the one that has to comply with all the restrictions that that the city's putting on it, including this body, the HHH, housing, the Holyoke Housing Authority, DC, the state, and sometimes HUD, although I don't think that's necessary here. So it's a lot of different bodies.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll show it to you so see what I can talk, what I'm talking about.
Thank you. in terms of some other pieces that have been on our radar, I just wanted to clarify, just restate for the MIFA amendment. So while we're in the process of creating an amendment to the MIFA contract, even before it was signed, Don Sanders did send us the letter to say that they were not going to have full funding, and thus effectively we're rescinding the application. And the letter went to the entire CPC on email. So thank you for forwarding that from Don Sanders to us, Amy. So that's the FY19 updates. For fiscal year 20, the Jackson Street contract's fully executed. The Jackson Street first-time homebuyer affordable housing restriction, Kathy says, has been created by her as a deed rider and is in motion, which is great. Armor and Company, I believe Dennis Luzariaga is going to join our meeting. He's not here now, so we may need to come back to this as a point of order if they do join later on. They're going to ask for an extension because I think they're running into what a lot of people are running into, right? And that Stephen is running into for Valley Opportunity Council, which is that supply chains are taking a long time right now, and getting construction projects off the ground, things are taking longer. So they're going to come ask for an extension of their project. And Kathy, is it on your radar that we need to finish their preservation restriction and get it signed?
Yes, I'm interested in the extension though. How long of an extension are they asking for?
6 months. So it's within our purview. We don't have to go to city council for it.
That's okay. And this is the first one, I take it, right? I don't think they've done it. Yeah, okay.
And the Holyoke merry-go-round carousel contract is still unsigned because they have concerns about preservation restrictions in general. And so we're later on in the meeting going to talk about, is there another way to kind of get around that and come up with something that feels good for our investment, but also feels good for them.
Megan,
Yep.
can you, I'm remembering this a little bit. Can you refresh my recollection what it was, what the concern was?
They're
'Cause I
just
think we
anxious
talked
about
about-
the concept. It's just the concept of anyone outside of their organization having any say in what happens there. You know, I think we've named again and again, like, we're not worried about the carousel, like they're doing really good work.
Okay.
So I think we're gonna later in the meeting talk about, like what we talked about before, is there a threshold under which we just say we're not gonna require preservation restriction because it is underneath a certain amount, and then I think that project will be able to move forward. Okay, Wisteria Hearst. Kathy, I think this is the last piece that I have as a question for you. They asked for an addendum so that they could extend their time because they have 81,000 and change left that they were not able to expend in time. And so they were wondering if they're going to be allowed to effectively extend the time frame in some way in order to be able to continue using the funding for electrical repair.
Is this another 6-month extension?
It would be 12 months.
In this
based on
situation,
our
the
last
deadline
meeting.
is passed, so.
But it is passed. So that's my last question for you, is just like, have you had a chance to think about if that's possible, or do they just have to reapply?
Yeah, I have not, is the answer to your question. I'd like to think about that. I guess I didn't recall the year extension. It presents an interesting question. I will, you put that on my radar, and I will put that on my list with the other items. And as I said, the contract, the grant agreements I've mentioned, I will get those signed. I think it's interesting that you have a contract committee. I think that'll be helpful. So I thank you for helping me with my time frame this evening. I appreciate it. I see Amy with her hand up.
Yeah, just one quick point that I'm glad that you're eager to get those contracts signed, like for the fire truck and those other ones. But just keep in mind that's just been drafted, and you know, the committee, as Megan says, would have to look at it first. I mean, normally we would have you look at it first, but we were trying to get the ball rolling. So, yeah, that's what I said to you. Yeah, my email.
Yeah, from a time frame, I just happened to notice, like the Scott Tower. I'm just wondering, do you foresee Amy, do you foresee a time issue with these things, or no?
Yeah, they're very urgent. In fact, the Scott Tower one, though, I just got some more suggested edits from the Kestrel person who's working with with the city, with the Yoni of the Conservation Commission. So I need to add those edits. And yeah, so it'll be really, it would be great if you could look at that before it goes to the committee, just because it is kind of an unusual thing. It's a purchase and sale. So we've never had a contract for CPA for a purchase and sale of land. We have purchased land, but we haven't required a contract for it.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you for that information. So there's going to be edits to that. When you'll send me the edits so I can.
Yeah, I can send them to you. I mean, maybe if you're able to look at them, I can send them to you before they go to whatever, to the committee, which might be even better than vice versa.
Because if there are issues, it would be good if we, kind of, flesh them out now. Hopefully there's not going to be anything major that it's going to be a problem. But so thank you for that information.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Kathy. I really appreciate you joining our meeting and all the work you're doing.
No problem. Thank you very much. You have a good evening and have a good Thanksgiving.
Thanks,
Happy
Kathy.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you too. Thank you.
All right. So next up on fiscal year 20 is the Lady Liberty Project. Mike, do you want to just kind of give us an overview of what's been going on with the Lady Liberty Project?
The study is done. We've had good news in the sense that our state senator John Velas has obtained for us a $50,000 grant. The total budgeted amount for the project to fully restore it's $110,000. So right out of the gate, we got $50,000, which is great. But the caveat is we have to spend it in FY2022, which is now, or else it goes back to Boston and we lose it. That's the galling part about this thing. So why I submitted with Chris Sims, the chairman of the War Memorial Commission, and with the affiliation with the Hoyle Park and Rec folks for clerical help, I'm asking for $60,000 to cover so we can start and complete the work in FY2022. I did talk to Ben Murphy from the, I think it's Community Development Office at City Hall, because I was going to ask him if we can go to Mass Historical Society and ask them, hopefully he would fill out the application for me. And, but he said, don't bother. You're 2 years away. They're so far behind. You'll never get it in time, Mike. The only place you can get it is this Community Preservation Committee in that time period. I then went to Bob Petrie, the city engineer, and I said, Bob, is this eligible for community development block grant funds? He says, yes, it is. But he said, Mike, you'll never get it. HUD is so backed up. They're a year and a half to 2 years out with their normal everyday, if you will, projects. He says, you'll never get it in time. The only way to get that kind of money that quick is the Community Preservation Committee. So that's why I've come before you with the help of Chris Sims for the War Memorial Commission and asking for $60,000 and to try to be as quick can be to get this to get the contract signed and get it awarded if that's possible, Madam Chairman, because I want to get this thing. We got to get this started because it's. I hate to see $50,000 go through our fingers, and I know that's the way it is. And so that's why I'm asking my eligibility form with Chris Sims and with the clerical help of the Park and Rec folks for $60,000 so we can start the work this spring. It's going to take about 2 months, I'm told. And but if we don't get it, there's no guarantee the $50,000 is coming back.
Yeah. Well, and I also really appreciate it was in the news, which is really nice, right? I think it's really important for us to share what we're doing for the community. And I think some folks are aware and some folks aren't. I'm going to share with you the results of the survey that we've gotten so far. And it's interesting the number of people who are straight up just like, yeah, I don't know anything. I don't think I'm that aware of how things are being spent, right? And I kind of wish I knew, but I don't know how to know more, or how could you reach out more? So I think anything that puts us in the news is a good thing. So that was really good coverage, and really appreciated your initiative at kind of pursuing it with other folks in the city to bring in $50,000 from the state. I think that's great. So I wanted to just thank you for that. And I hope everyone got to see the article that we sent around.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. And I thank Senator Velas, and I'm just hoping we can get to $60,000. as quick can be, so we can get this in the works. And like I said, the galling part about this is if we don't spend it in time, it goes back to Boston, and there's simply no guarantee we'll get a penny, anything. So if I got $50,000 in my pocket, I really like to keep it there.
All right, we're gonna move on to fiscal year 21. As we're sort of cruising through 7 on the contract and kind of restrictions updates. So the JFK monument, that contract is executed. Amy, do you want to share your update about that project?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the great news is I heard from Mark Joyce that they're ready to start construction. In fact, I happened to go by it and I saw they had yellow tape out, and he wanted our temporary CPA sign. So I brought it, into City Hall yesterday, and and he said he would pick it up this morning. So if you drive by the JFK monument, you may see our CPA banner there as they're working on repairing the grouting. So that's a great publicity too, a good way for people to see the good work that you're all doing.
All right. Mayor Field, contract was executed, but Amy, did they run into needing an extension?
Yes. Hold on. I just have to find in my notes what was said about that. I thought that you kind of were going through that earlier for some reason when you went through the different updates.
Yeah, I'm just going in order now through all the years for the projects that we haven't hit on yet.
The problem is is that my computer is very slow. I'm going to try to see if I can minimize this and be able to tell you exactly. Okay, it looks like I can tell you. Just one moment. Mayor Field. Okay, so. Okay. Are you all there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you hear me. Okay, so the contract was executed for Mayor Field, but Bob Parent has requested through a 3-month extension. The good news is this extension is already allowed for in the contract. It wouldn't have to go back to City Council if the committee approved it.
Did he give any sense of why they required the extension?
Yes. Winter weather conditions mean that the work cannot start until spring.
Okay. So do you think we need to vote on the extension? Is there any discussion? No? Okay. Does someone want to make a motion to have the 3-month extension for the Mayor Field project?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Okay, Pulaski Park is fully executed. We don't have the study yet though, right?
No, and let me just see what I have on that one. Yeah, I see one of the things that happened with that is that Mike McManus has left the city and Bob Parent has had to take this over. So as far as I know,
poor Bob Parent. I feel like he's taken on half our projects.
Yeah, actually,
Bob, we appreciate you.
he takes everything over. And by the way, I realize his name is pronounced Parent. I'm always saying Parent, but it's Parent.
Okay, so Bob Parent has unfortunately taken on yet another project, and so it's still out to bid. Do we know anything? If not, it's okay, Amy. We can come back to it in the next meeting.
No, all I know is that what I told you and that the contract has been executed.
Okay. All right, War Memorial. So this was the War Memorial building, getting it cleaned, right? And making that limestone look beautiful. So the contract was executed. I think Chris Sims, the War Memorial Commissioner, is here to talk about what's happening with the project and to sort of explain to us what he needs from us at this point. Do you want to jump in, Chris?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and greetings to all. So basically, I did submit a memorandum on official letterhead, and basically the extension is being requested due to the weather conditions And that's really about it.
Was there an issue with the company being able to do it earlier this summer or fall?
So we've been going back and forth with Presto, and now it's seeming that Presto won't even do a prevailing wage contract. So we're kind of back to the drawing board, really, to find another outfit that will actually do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions about that? Mike? And then Mary.
Chris, I kind of lost a little bit. So by definition, we can't consider it a quote because it hasn't gone out to bid yet. But is Presto saying that the salary structure of the prevailing wages in Massachusetts is something they'd rather not deal with, therefore they're not going to bid on it? Is the purchasing department aware of this, to your knowledge, and have they rebid it, to your knowledge?
So after having a conversation with Bob Parent, he told me that he was going to make the bidding department aware of that particular situation, and I will definitely follow up on that.
I'm sorry, I'm Riley smiling because I'm just thinking, poor Bob. Once again, he's going to get involved. Okay.
Yeah, I hope the guy doesn't leave Hoyoke.
We owe that man.
I know. That's a big concern.
Yes, I think Mary had her hand and then Amy.
Sure.
Oh, you're muted, Mary.
You got a question, Amy?
Hold on, Mary's going to go.
Okay, so I think we started out by saying that the contract is executed. What does that mean in this case? If they do not have anybody to sign saying that they are going to do the work, or that they're even going to follow the rules on hiring employees, how can we say that the project is executed?
The contract is executed, and that means that the contract establishes the scope of work between us and the applicant, which in this case is Chris Sims from the War Memorial Commission.
All right, and written out in the contract is the fact that they have to have hiring practices commensurate with the City of Holyoke rules. Is that correct? Okay. Is that a yes? Meg, is that a yes?
Yes, but it's also the state of Massachusetts.
Okay.
Because of the dollar amount involved, it's also the state of Massachusetts requirement for the hourly wage. I forget what it is, but it's also the state of Massachusetts that says you have to meet it. And
okay.
So it's not only us, it's the state of Massachusetts.
So Chris, are you concerned that, you know, yes, I'm hearing winter weather, but really it's this other issue, right? Like, because the reason why we ran into the winter weather issue is because of you couldn't find someone who would do it for prevailing wage, or because it needs to go back out to bid and hasn't.
Could you repeat that one more time?
So it sounds like we ran into the winter weather issue because of the prevailing wage issue, and it needing to go back out to bid.
Combination of two now. So if they were going to be able to do it for the prevailing wage, they're also claiming winter weather conditions. So again, with my conversation with Bob Parent, you know, he's pretty confident that we'll be able to find another company that does this type of restoration work, in keeping with the extension that we're asking for. So he told me not to sweat it.
Okay. Well, any other, Amy, do you want to speak still?
Yeah, just the only, in this case, this would have to, if the committee approved this extension, it would have to go back through city council, which is a whole process that, you know, as you know, kind of delays things. And so and as I think Mary pointed out, it's a little bit confusing because it's very convoluted, because then we would have to ask Kathy to create an addendum to the contract once again. So all of that will take time.
Okay.
You know,
well,
so
we can
I'm
also
just
put in the order for the Chestnut Street extension at the same time. We can put them on the same order to city council if they're both
right. But what I'm just saying, that's true. But what I'm just saying is that if you only are requesting 6 months, a lot of this can be delayed because of this process of going back through city council and back to the law department, which may delay your vendors being paid. I mean, I don't know. It's just unusual because the contract's already been executed, but it would need an addendum. Maybe it could move forward. I don't know.
Amy, what would the do you know offhand what the 6-month extension would bring it to?
The deadline, I think, would be June 30th, 2022. Isn't that right, Chris?
So my question is, like, is it realistic to get the
that is
project
correct.
done by the end of June in 2022?
Who are you asking?
Yeah, so we're pretty confident that if we do get that extension, that we can definitely find another outfit that can execute that type of restoration. Through my conversation with Presto, it would take anybody that specializes in that type of restoration work just under a month to do. So if we get the ball rolling and get this work done as late as May, it'll be completed by June.
Okay. All right. Is anyone else want to bring up a point of discussion? Or are we ready to vote? Oh, Mary, go ahead.
Are there other companies that can do this? Is my first question. And secondly, I thought we knew that there was a specific company that was committed to doing this. I'm hearing the name Presto now, but when we were voting on it, didn't we hear that there was somebody that could do it and that was the reason why we were committing the money?
Most certainly. And I'm not trying to shirk any of the blame, but I'm pretty sure that Presto knew the whole time that this is going to be a prevailing wage type situation. And then at the very last minute, it was, oh, we can't do prevailing wage. So it really kind of swept us at the knee with that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Michael?
Madam Chairman, is it up to us now to grant a 6-month extension on this particular project?
Yep.
Well, if so, I'd make a motion that we allow a 6 months extension to the War Memorial Building cleaning project.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Meg, can I just ask, just to get a refresher on this? So did the committee vote for a 1-year extension for Valley Opportunity Council? And now a 6-month one, because I need to, send this to City Council, 6 months for the War Memorial.
Yes. And Chris, if you could just keep us in the loop, right? When you have a sense of what that company is, when you know that you found that company and you're moving forward, let us know so we know it's making progress.
Most certainly, Madam Chairman. Again, thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much. Okay, awesome. We're cruising along, people, through these 18 projects. Okay, the last 4 here are just like, the Scott Tower Anniversary Hill piece, Amy shared earlier that, we have the contract. She's working with Kestrel on kind of the purchase and sale. It's going to go to Kathy for her to look at in the law department. Kathy's also going to work on the conservation restriction that's needed. The fire truck is drafted. Thank you, Amy, for taking it. Yep.
Kathy's not going to work on the conservation restriction. That's something that's done at the time of closing, and that's where Kestrel comes in.
Oh, Kestrel will do that.
They work on it. Yeah. And and as just to make sure it's clear, I'm still working on putting in the edits that Kestrel requested for that contract. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. The fire truck Amy drafted, and that's going to go to Kathy to look at, and then hopefully to either the full body or to a subcommittee. Wayfinders, the affordable housing restriction is still needed, and Kathy's going to work on that. And then Wisteria Hearst, I know that Bob is not here, but I was going to ask him about that. So maybe at the next meeting, we can ask him for some information around why it's not signed and go from there. Maybe he can come to our next meeting. We can ask him about all 1,000,005 things he's involved in. All right. So now we're actually going to start going in order.
Sorry.
No. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
but there is one thing that, well, I don't know if you want to bring this up now, but the MIFA murals have, really does need some terms decided on before, but if you want to keep waiting like till the next meeting, because it will probably be a while before Kathy would get to it, but I just wanted to throw that in there that it's pretty vague what a contract would look like for that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, let's pause and do that really quickly now before we move on then. So the Murals Project, Amy, do you have on hand the language that we had from what MIFA had suggested? One of our questions is
actually, I just sent it to you, but I think in an email. Yeah. So what I wrote is, he said, in the event that the Victory Theater is not restored and reopened and the murals cannot be returned to the theater, MIFA agrees to make the murals a permanent loan in perpetuity to the city of Holyoke, with certain provisions to be determined between MIFA and the CPC and reviewed and approved by the city solicitor office. So I don't really know what a permanent loan in perpetuity is or what these certain provisions would be. Plus, I don't know if a preservation and if it would require some kind of preservation, which probably not for this type of thing. I don't know if it would require any kind of preservation restriction.
So it's a bit of an open question around, are there specific terms folks would want in the contract, right? That we should make sure are in the contract as it's being drafted. Yeah, Mike.
Madam Chairman, the only condition I have is make it absolutely sure that if we're going to pay for this restoration, it becomes the permanent property of the city of Holyoke. I don't want any other nonprofits sneaking in there and grabbing them and heading down to Boston with them. I want to make sure it's absolutely clear that if we give you this money to restore these two panels, these two beautiful murals, that in the event that the Victory is not fully restored, and it just doesn't occur, that those murals become permanent property of the city of Holyoke. That's the only, from my point of view, that's the only restriction that I would like to have in there very plainly. It's going to be the property of the city of Holyoke. No loan in perpetuity, nothing. It's our property, period.
Is there a sense though of timeline? Like after 10 years, if the Victory has not been fully restored and the murals have not been moved to that new building, then they become the property of the city? Is there something like that we would want in the contract? I'm interested in what other people think around time frame.
Boy, yeah, 10 years. Madam Chairman, yeah, an additional 10 years is what you're saying. Yeah, that's reasonable. It's a hell of a project.
This has to be a contract that we all stand by, and I think that this is a sticking point. So I want to get it right. So I would like to hear everyone say, like, yeah, that sounds good, or no, I don't feel good about that. Or here's my suggestion. We've heard from Mike. Who else could speak up? Mary? Yep. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. I agree with Mike in regards to making sure that whatever contract has the language establishing that these murals will be the permanent property of the city of Holyoke. And I like the idea of putting a timeline on it, but I don't know if, are we expert in that? I'd feel good if Mimi was here because she does contracts. I'm in favor of your idea, pursuing investigation of the timeline idea, but I don't want to put a specific time on it tonight.
Okay. Anyone else in that boat?
Yeah.
Yeah, Marco?
I don't want to be mixing things up, but at the Historic Commission meeting, now I thought we were talking about a letter for the sconces as well as the mural. Are we funding both those projects? And
so the first project in fiscal year 19 asked for funding to restore the sconces.
Right.
And that's the project that just lapsed. The timeline is not going to be met for them to be at full funding. And
I
so
see.
that
Okay.
money comes back to the CPC coffers. The project we're talking about is just the restoration of the murals,
Okay.
which will be installed in the City Hall ballroom until, right, the theater is restored. It's that piece we're talking about.
Our meeting was only last week, but I thought we were talking about writing a letter for it. So why didn't it come up that the contractor kept raising his hand? But I was just confused for a moment and wanted to make sure that we weren't pursuing two things at the same time. That kind of doubles the
So
ability.
the reason why it was in the Historic Commission meeting last week is because since they've lapsed that funding, they've reapplied underneath this current funding round for that money again.
Well, if I can just add, there's a slight change because the first time it was for 100,000 and it was based on reopening the theater. That was the goal of their application. And then we asked for some specific, we wanted to know where the CPA funds would be spent. And they said the sconces. So now they're putting in an eligibility application for something different where the sconces might be restored and put on display somehow. But that's very different from the
The funding not be contingent on the theater being rebuilt,
right.
similar
and it's a much smaller
the
amount
murals.
of money, I believe, although I have to look back at what they.
Kip, you had your hand up. Kip and then Michael.
I was going to provide clarity that has already been provided now. So the second application.
Kip, what do you think about the idea of creating a time frame, or even about ownership reverting to the city versus the perpetual loan?
You're asking me that question?
Yeah.
Well, I think a perpetual loan is as good as ownership, but probably does not require a timeline. So it would be, I mean, maybe I'm using my imagination, but let's just say it's 12 years from now, then they get full funding and they're going to restore the Victory Theater, but now the city owns the murals, or the 10 years have gone by and the city owns the murals. That's why, I would be satisfied with a perpetual loan of the murals without any deadline, because if it doesn't get built, the city has possession of those murals forever. So that's my thoughts on it.
Okay. Well, I don't think we're in a position to necessarily name it tonight. And I think hopefully in the next meeting, because we are down 3 members tonight, maybe it makes sense to hold off and wait until we hopefully have a larger group next meeting, and then we'll try to get to like a finalized place on that. Okay. Let's move now back to agenda item 1. So reviewing and approving minutes from 3/24/21 and 9/22/21. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes that were sent out last month? Any changes or clarifying pieces anyone want to name? Mary, I only had one small one, which is in the 9/22 minutes. Just the first spelling of my name doesn't have an H in it. And that was just twice on the first couple bullet points there. But that was the only thing I caught. The minutes were great. They were so crazy detailed. And you really captured it. It was wonderful. Mary, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Anyway, sorry about misspelling your name. I think Amy tried to tell me and I didn't catch on. But anyway, in regards to the detail on the minutes, it was a long meeting and I'm still learning what is important and what to include and what to omit. So hopefully they'll be shorter in the future. Sorry about all the reading, folks.
Well worth it.
All right. Anyone else have anything they want to mention? Okay. All right. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes from 3/24 and 9/22. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Nicely done. Okay. Number 2, Mary, you attended the CPA Coalition workshop. It was a virtual workshop, right?
Yes, I will. Am I muted again? No.
No,
Right?
you're good now.
Oh, good. Okay, so yes, it was a virtual workshop and it was for new people to CPA. So much of what I have for notes, you guys probably already know, but there have been a couple of items that even came up tonight that were clarified at the meeting. So I have 8 points. I'll try to go through them quickly. Okay, so first of all, just that the CPA Coalition does provide local CPAs with technical assistance and information. So that's who operated the workshop. The annual responsibilities of CPAs include, first, there has to be one public hearing a year to get input from the public. Second, there must be an update to the CPA plan annually. There must be a review of the CPA account annually. We must prepare a budget for City Council and making project recommendations for final approval to City Council. I think we do all of those, but when they laid it out so formally, it seemed to me, I didn't remember us doing each one of those separately or formally. They talked about the CPA revenues, how it comes from a surcharge and from the annual trust fund, and that the distribution is November 15th. And they said, be sure that the interest earned on the CPA account goes back into the CPA fund. So in other words, it's supposed to be a, interest-bearing account. And so Amy did say we are getting that money, that interest. So that's a good thing. They talked about administrative, the 5% of the CPA budget can be spent on administrative expenses. Apparently 2/3 of all member communities have a paid part-time staff person, and they listed some of the responsibilities. And just sort of as an editorial aside, it seems like Amy's administrative responsibilities were more extensive than the average. So anyway, that was opinion on my part. Let's see, they described budget construction, saying that the municipal budget is different from CPA budget in that the municipal budget is based on expenses and is top down, and the CPA budget is based on ideas from the community and goes bottom up. So therefore, there is a need for annual accounting for everything. Talked about who is eligible under CPA for CPA funds, saying that government entities and 501c3s or nonprofits are most obviously eligible, and that while individual homeowners and non-incorporated entities were also eligible, they cautioned that local CPAs should be very cautious in dealing with both of those types of applicants. They talked about specific rules on awards, saying no funding for routine maintenance or operational expenses, no indoor recreation projects, outdoor recreation only. Land acquisition must be permanently restricted with the state. We talked about that tonight. and housing projects must be for housing designated permanently as affordable. So there is a permanent affordable housing restriction on affordable housing projects. And I think that came up tonight too. Some specific recent changes were that in the historic category, projects that include historic documents and artifacts can now be entertained. And we can now rehabilitate old playgrounds where that was prohibited before. So those are the items that I had for notes.
Thank you so much for sharing and also just for attending, which is great. I think it's good for us to be connected to the coalition, which, you know, can provide us a lot of assistance as we're trying to navigate. Some of this stuff is really complicated, and I think like we've learned a lot, but we're always learning new things about what can and can't be done, how things must be done. Amy, you had something you wanted to add?
Just a quick question. I was also at the boot camp, but Mary, I was just wondering, do you recall that when they talked about how affordable housing restrictions must be permanent, if that was only for acquisitions by the city? Because I know that's the case with other, you know, perpetual restrictions, that it's only required when it's an acquisition, not when it's like rehabilitation or something like that.
So your question has to do with rehabilitation versus acquisition of the whole house?
Well,
Of the whole
sometimes
building?
the city, like for example, the city, if the city were purchasing, like the fact that the city is purchasing Scott Tower land means it has to be a perpetual restriction because it's an acquisition. And I think that's the same thing when it comes to housing. So in other words, maybe an affordable housing restriction, because I think that the committee discussed that it wouldn't have to be a permanent affordable housing restriction for, I think it was for Jackson Street after a certain number of years. I think that it was a 25-year affordable housing restriction. Yes, that's what it was. It's coming back to me. So I'm just saying, I think that's the distinction. I'm just wondering if you heard that too.
No, I heard that it had to be permanent and that it had to be a chain where the, you know, and I understood it in terms of the Jackson Street and Habitat for Humanity project specifically. That's not to say what I understood is correct. You know, if you have checked it out with somebody else, then, you know, you've probably got more up to date or more nuanced information. But
yeah,
I understood.
I'll have to ask Stuart and look that over, because that would really set us back, since already the committee, you all decided 25 years for the affordable housing restriction for Jackson.
Let's pursue it and see what comes out of it. The other thing that was interesting that came out of it was the digitization piece. So like I'd been speaking with some folks who have documents either in the history room in the library or in the basement of the city hall. And we were talking about what does it look like to potentially have a CPA project in the future involving digitization. And the way that they spoke about it in the workshop was that you could only have a digitization project if you are also restoring or rehabilitating the documents, the originals, in some kind of key way. Because they're sort of worried that folks are just going to like digitize documents and like, well, they're digitized, they exist forever, and not really care for and preserve the originals, which, I mean, I don't think that that would be the case, right? We're thinking about access and you know, people being able to easily access documents and search them online versus having to go into the library and have access to them, right? But it was an interesting distinction that would really shift how someone would apply. Yeah, last word, Amy, then we're going to move on.
If it has to be a permanent affordable housing restriction, we're really going to be in a bad spot with Jackson Street, because that contract is finally executed and they're starting to do work and they've submitted a large invoice. So,
well, let's follow up on it before we're concerned, and let's see what Stuart says. Okay.
Very awkward if I can't give them their money. So
it is what it is, and we'll pursue it and fix it if we have to when we get there, right? Like I'm gonna keep saying, we're all learning. There's a million things here, and the stuff is really complicated, right? So, and often right now we're doing things for the first time, like almost every time, right? There's something brand new we've never done before that we're figuring out the rules of. So take a breath and we'll see what happens and we'll go from there. Okay, thank you so much for sharing, Mary. All right, so Amy, do you want to share what Bob Parent shared about the stained glass work in City Hall?
Yeah, sure. Oh wait, sorry, I'm looking. I just have to open the correct thing here.
I'm looking at the eligibility form right now.
Yeah, that's not it.
Okay.
And I just have to warn you that my computer does freeze sometimes. So
You have no technological luck, Amy.
what?
You have no technological luck.
Well,
Laptops
it's the
are always
city. It's the city that has, you know, this issue. That's been a problem with this city laptop from the beginning because it has to go through the city system. Okay. I have all these things open.
No, it's there.
I just have to open the correct thing, and the problem is that I'll be able to open it in just a
I think it's the third tab.
Okay, that's one of them. Okay, you're right. All right, so the report that Bob Parent submitted is really a very large, like over 100-page long report that they submit to their larger funding source that they also send to us. So this is linked from the website, and just to show you that this is a before and after picture. So this is window 3, and you can see what it looks like here. From the inside, and this is from the outside, and also when that storm or wind kind of knocked the glass out, and then here is after it's restored. So you can really see like how all these joints are very dark, and then you look down here and you can see how bright and clear and nice that looks. And then this is from the outer view, and I believe there's some kind of layer that they've put there because you can see how that looks different from the previous one, which didn't have this kind of protective layer from the outside.
Nice.
So that's that one. Sorry, was somebody saying something?
Yeah, Amy, I said it's beautiful.
Yeah, great.
It's beautiful.
And then, let's see, hold on. Oh, wait a minute. These are two different things. Okay, all right. And so here's the another example of what was restored and completed. And this is window 12, the way it looked, the before picture and after in the same, not after the outside part. This is before it was restored. And then you can see the difference in the after picture. This is what the view is from the inside and then from the outside. So it is still an ongoing multi-year project, but I just wanted you to see. And also he did install a permanent sign, which acknowledges the Community Preservation Act Committee, or the Community Preservation Act, and that this was supported by the citizens of Holyoke. So that's in the ballroom now for all to see.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy.
You're
Good
welcome.
to see projects in motion. Okay, moving to agenda item 4, committee member reports. Marco, do you want to share what's been going on in the Historic Commission as relates to CPA and any kind of things they want us to know and think about, or any priorities they have for upcoming projects or anything that you want to share?
Yeah, I can do that. I had Ben Murphy help me with this before he left. Ben Murphy's no longer with the city, so right now I think they're a little short there in OPED. So I know that Aaron Vega is trying to fill in, and we are working with Richard Almstrom, the chair, and I'm involved as well because the local historic district commission and the Holyoke Historic Commission are right now. The plan is to merge the two because there's the reasoning is an advantage to the city in that the local historic district, which only has jurisdiction on Fairfield Avenue, could that power, let's say, could be applied to other local historic districts created in the city. And, it would include benefits for the Holyoke Historic Commission. So it's unclear exactly how that's happening now. It does involve the Ordinance Commission and City Council. And I think it's something that's going to shake out in the beginning of the year. In general, when things are working properly, though, the Holyoke Historic Commission has two main priorities. One is demolition delay. That's what they also call the preservation ordinance. And they get notice from what happens is that they'll get an application for a demolition. This demolition delay is now with the Ordinance Committee, which of course I think is being reorganized now. So again, there's a little bit of delay there. There should be a meeting in December, and the process of this demolition delay is that the building department notifies the Holyoke Historic Commission. They try to have public hearings to raise awareness of some important building that they're going that we take offense to having to demolish, and then we try to get relevant groups involved to find a solution. It might be that. Like in some cases, somebody will give the building away for $1, and then the person who receives it will move the building, so it's not demolished, where it might be relocated. And there aren't many. And I actually have not been within this process. That's where it's a little, they've been writing this ordinance for a long time. So they're hoping that it'll be approved, in the early winter. And that's one of their priorities now. Their other priority is the endangered properties list, which is part of the Holyoke Preservation Plan, which is a document from 2017. I can share that if you like, but there is one part of that on page 53 is a list of the 10 most endangered properties in Holyoke. So, and I can enumerate them. I've got it pulled up right here. Let's see here. How did I change plans? I said I had it, but then I moved. It must have changed pages on me. But there are buildings like the Armory, the Richardson train station. Let me see. There, we came back up here. Let me see what page I'm on. Oh yeah, I'm right by it. Excuse me for the delay here. I think I can say it pretty quickly. Yeah, the Armory, the Richardson train station is number 2. The Newton block is number 3. That's an example of Holyoke worker housing. And I don't know all these. I can go out and explore if we want to get more information on it. But the Whitcomb block, 14 Center Street, Mill buildings, just a general category. Just scrolling down here. Oh, church buildings, another general category. And so that was it. I thought it might have had 10, but it didn't. So, we would want to just be on the lookout for, applications that have something to do with, the historic fabric of Holyoke. CP, that's the sort of second part of this. If that was part A, what that commission is trying to do, part B would be, having Community Preservation Commission support for the causes. So if there's a support and funding for projects in the historical category, historical resources category, working with applicants to focus funding on the most critical and most appropriate projects. So sometimes people might come in because they want to do something, but then like we might need to redirect them to the roof, because if they do interior work but the roof's not right, we just want to make sure that if we do give funding to projects, that we do it in a logistically sound and sound manner. And then the third item here is advocate and inform historic applicants, where possible. I think the lesson here would be to try to recognize what is most helpful to. When we have applicants that come in with something, let's make sure that their applications make sense, that they're logical, that any funding that we give to them is applied towards preserving the building first and foremost. I think that's about it. Does anybody have any questions? I can try to answer any, and maybe I think there's a better communication now with writing letters. So, we have applicants for the CPA who have to get letters from the Holyoke Historic Commission, that their property is significant and whatnot. We could be doing more even. So I'll be on the lookout for ways that I can jump in and have better connectivity between the two commissions. And I can answer any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions or thoughts from Marco? Anything you want him to bring back to the Historic Commission? I mean, I think I'll be interested to hear what comes out of, your discussion. I know that for example, the train station has been something that it's on our CP preservation plan. I know that you just mentioned it. And I think that's a conversation I think I'm interested to have.
Interestingly, David White, I think, is the name of the private citizen who owns the train station now. I'm not sure what the actual arrangements are, but he's been working on it and he's been making improvements. He supposedly is, he's fixed any leaks in the roof. He's consolidated some of the structural elements inside. He's been doing some of the sort of invasive renovations that have been done. It was open during the what is it called? Open Doors Holyoke, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I finally got to get inside. The roof structure on the inside of the building is really spectacular. It's very unexpected. It's unfortunately, I don't know how many people, have you guys been inside before? Because, it's like any other building, like you would expect to go in and see a big, high ceiling volume. And there used to be one, but then they added this mezzanine level. When you get up on the mezzanine to see the structure, it's really spectacular. And he's trying to fix it up for somebody to purchase it within the next, 2 to 5 years. And he's thinking that it might be a huge attraction to the area, maybe a restaurant, maybe a destination. But that would be something that if the right applicant came by and wanted to do the right kind of work, we should just, always be considerate of Holyoke's historic resources and trying to maintain and improve them at all times.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you.
Appreciate it. Mike, do you want to share anything from the HHA lens? Anything new on the HHA front?
We're going to have a very, very busy 3 years, no question.
Yeah, you are. In a good way.
In a good way, very good way. Actually, it's going to be quite nice. But we don't, vis-a-vis the Ohio CPA, really, we don't have much. Ours is going to be federally funded and state funded, so we won't take any money from our wallets from this committee. It's going to be taken from Washington and.
Well, what's interesting, Michael, is that we didn't get a single housing application this time around, and that's I think because everyone was able to get ARPA funding.
Exactly.
So, but as a result, we're going to have like $95,000 that we can't touch this year. It'll just roll over,
Good.
And that's fine. Right?
Good.
It creates a pot of money for the future, right, for housing. But there were no applicants this year. And I think largely because there's only so many projects in the pipeline, right? And when this massive funding opportunity came forward through the ARPA dollars, I think the need or the projects that were ready to go went for that money and got it. So it'll be interesting to see what comes forward after this. Do you want to quickly recap just some of the things coming up that HHA is going to be doing over the next 3 years?
Well, it'll be building homes for home ownership. We follow the guidelines of HUD and primarily HUD. They're our senior parents. And but we've employed an architectural firm to come up with the concept of what type of house to use for that environment. And we've got a marketing person who studies markets for housing, that's advising the housing authority and our development team that this is the type of applicant you should look for, how much money he makes, and so on and so forth. And this is the type of and coupling that with the architect's design for the South Holyoke neighborhood. This is the type of house you should build to blend in with the neighborhood historically, aesthetically. So we've got 2 good tracks that we're on that will, as our story unfolds, we'll have a good solid project as we have that one, we just had a month or two ago, we had an official startup of the smaller rental unit we've got going up by the old Dry Corns Bakery. It's going to be beautiful. It's almost astounding what they come up with a design. You won't believe it's public housing. I guarantee it. You won't believe it's rental housing. You would never guess it in a million years. It's going to be quite nice. And the homes that were being built in South Holyoke that are for the next 3 years are going to be in that tone. You won't believe what you'll see. So it's all positive news, but we're not going to take any money out of the CPA wallets. So we're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Mary, do you have anything to share for conservation?
I thought I did that already. I thought we did that a couple of weeks ago.
You did. I just didn't know if there's anything new you wanted to share.
Well, I know Yoni did apply for a couple of things. And so, we got those in the applications. Did you want to hear about that?
I think we're going to have time to look at the eligibility applications later, or at least to broadly talk about what they are.
So do you want me to say something about them now or not? Okay.
Let's wait till we get later on in the meeting.
Okay, yeah, fine, good, fine.
Okay. And Kip, is there anything that you want to share? Okay. All right. So let's move into talking about the survey results. So Amy, did you send this out to everybody? Have folks had a chance to look at this?
The survey results? No, because you had told me, I thought you were going to share them. Because if you want, I can look it up now and put it right. I can put it in the chat or.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Would you like me to do that?
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, so we had 62 folks that responded to the English version of the survey. First question, how well informed do you consider yourself on how CPA funds and taxpayer dollars have been spent? And so of the folks who, answered the survey, 43% felt I'm not informed. I have no idea. 33% felt somewhat informed and 15% felt really well informed. And Amy, remind me what the column 1 issue was. Like, where would the 7% go? I know there's a funkiness where it
was confusing. It was, I hadn't used this program before, and there was sort of a grid with columns, which really didn't work with the question. So it was just
the people that answered that, though, do you know if they meant to put one of the other ones?
Most of them said somewhat informed, as I remember.
All right. And then, so if you answered well informed above, where have you received your information? And you can see it's a real mix, right? The majority of people are like, 6 people are like, I watch the CPC meetings, either live or recorded. Another 3 folks said they use the website. One person said they're on the email subscriber list that Amy puts out, her newsletter. That's great. 2 said they had seen us in a newspaper article. And a good chunk, 22% said, like Facebook, right? Like I'm seeing stuff posted on Hello Holyoke or on the CPA Facebook page. And then another group of folks said, like, I've heard it mentioned in the city council meeting, or a mix of all of these things. So it gives us a sense of how people are getting their information, right? The bulk of people are either kind of, watching meetings live, checking the website, or kind of getting their information on Facebook. What do you believe is the best way or most convenient way for your voice to be heard? A huge chunk of people were like, because these are the people that do online surveys, right? This is our audience. They were like, I like online surveys, and thank you for doing one. So you had 37% who said, I really like online surveys. Another 41% felt like they really like public meetings that are really well publicized. Another group thought really wanting more informal discussions, like informal ways to get involved and talk about it. I'm wondering if some of those folks are almost remembering some of the early visioning stuff that CPC did at the senior center, right? Where it was kind of like, sit at a table. What are some of the things you think CPA should do, right? Like a very informal session. And 8% said that they really liked to be able to attend the monthly meetings or Zoom in or watch them later. Some folks said, like, things aren't accessible to me. Like it feels hard to be involved, or it's a combination of all of these things. But most folks really said they liked the survey or being able to attend public meetings, whether formal or informal. If you checked other above, please explain below. A couple of things people said. So one person wrote, not everyone has the time to check the city website to see when meetings are or when plans are happening. So like really this feeling of like, how do I get involved? How do I know when meetings are happening? What are some of those easy ways to get involved and know what's happening? We know, is it possible that things might be mailed home, right? Is it possible that there are other ways to, get involved if you can't attend a meeting, right? And I think for sure right now, at least we have virtual meetings. So folks, they're recorded, people can watch them ever, they can zoom in. Maybe also it's helping people understand that people can always watch the recorded meetings, even when we're not virtual and we're back in the City Hall chambers or the annex. All right, these 3 pie charts were all questions around what's your overall opinion of the value of how CPA has funded different projects in each category. And we gave a few examples of each. So for historic, 30% were very satisfied with the value of the historic projects. 50% were somewhat satisfied, and about 20% were not satisfied. So a real mix. Right, and you kind of saw this throughout all of them. Like, so what about open space and recreational projects? 51% were really satisfied, 37% were somewhat satisfied, 11% were not satisfied at all. And then 7 was their overall opinion of the value for the affordable housing projects. You saw 30% very satisfied, 41% somewhat satisfied, and 27% not satisfied. All right. Is there any category, neighborhood, and Holyoke that you feel should be more fully addressed or targeted for CPA funding? So some comments. More park and open space projects. Someone lifted up the playground in Ingleside as just being particularly needing some love. It's old, it's sunken into the ground. The park itself is bare and joyless. This person is a really great detail on that. And had some great ideas for the playscape, right? Like, would be great to have new shade trees or fruit trees and a newer playground, like a natural log wood playground, something really different that like doesn't exist anywhere else in the city. I love that vision there. Other neighborhoods that folks wanted to see addressed more: the Flats, buildings in wards 1 and 2, West Holyoke, projects for our elders, the Kmart Plaza area, historical home restorations, affordable housing, right in the middle of this like national housing crisis, historic preservation, downtown Holyoke, the City Hall and the Annex, affordable housing, Ward 5, downtown, Springdale Park. Parks and Rec should be emphasized, right? This person kind of just named all of these like great assets that we have. And then the downtown area. And I like this point, downtown has tremendous potential with parks, and Ward 7 has Mount Tom, Connecticut River Access, and Jones Point Field. And then another shout out for low-income rental housing. And then do you have any other comments or suggestions on future Holyoke CPA funding, the CPA application process, or any other CPA related areas? I love this point. Someone said, could we have an online map showing locations and information about every CPA project to date? Something that's more visual, where I can just kind of see the city and click on things and a project description appears.
I'm actually working with somebody on that. Yeah. Just,
I'm excited. Keep the information flowing, streamline processes, make it simpler to understand what type of funding this is, right? It's not clear to me what isn't eligible, someone wrote. Is it possible to use to use this funding for the historic Victorian houses where people have to paint the exteriors of these homes or kind of do this work with these historic homes, but it's really expensive? Someone who wasn't a fan of the Victory Theater funding. Trees being planted, ones to replace all the ones we lost in the Highlands and elsewhere to improve regulation of temperature and climate, as well as for aesthetics. I wonder if this is also referring to all the damage that we had in that October snowstorm a few years ago, where a lot of trees were damaged or lost. Someone kind of highlighted their concern about Scott's Tower, that just like, what does it look like to protect that investment? So if we put money into Scott's Tower, how do we make sure that it is either, well trafficked enough or kind of protected enough that there is not then new graffiti, right? Or new use of that building in a way that we wouldn't want to happen, right? And this is also with the Victory, so much money has gone into it. There's no real sign of opening. Would money be better spent in other sites? And then a mention of Lynch School being torn down versus, being made into some sort of historic site or preserved in some way. This person says, I think it should be the highest priority to have poor people as members of the committee. I think people who are low income are vital to this discussion. I believe in historic preservation. I think the Lynch School debacle was a travesty. I believe in outdoor recreation and revamping parks, but I feel like if poor people are on the committee, more funds would go to housing, right? So kind of like, hey, are we really aware of our city? Are we putting our thoughts forward around priorities for housing? There's always concerns about housing. I will say that. That's happened in every survey that CPA has ever done. There's always folks who just, really don't want public funding of affordable housing. Okay, we need better sports fields for our youth, redeveloping Scott's Tower, more public processes. And I think, this actually just is more helpful for us as we're thinking about like how to redo the survey next time. But I think that gives you a good sense of the results that we got. Okay. So I know that was a lot, and I'll make sure that everyone has access to it afterwards if you want to go back into it. But I wonder if folks initially have any big takeaways or questions that came out of that survey. Marco, was your hand up?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. Any questions or takeaways? Yeah, Mary?
Okay, so according to that boot camp, once a year we have to do some kind of a survey and collection. Well, they didn't say specifically survey, but we have to collect information from the community as to what the community wants. Can you derive from that survey some specifics, that we would say came out of it? And secondly, do we do an annual report? Does anyone know?
So we have.
Who do you want us to report to?
I don't know, but that's what it ourselves. I don't know.
So we have.
I think it's supposed to like be on file somewhere with the city council or on the website for CPA or something.
I think what you're referring to is what we've had before, which is the preservation plan. It hasn't been updated in a few years, but it was initially created to start with as like here is the city, here are some of the things that, committee might want to tackle, right, with this source of funding that you now have. And the idea is that you're using surveys, you're doing public meetings or informal discussion, right? You're finding ways to connect with the community so that if you want to revise that plan, you can, right? Like if something really new comes out and there's this like big energy around, right? Like if there was huge energy around the Victory Theater, this group could choose like, sure, we're going to take all $900,000 and we're going to, move it towards the Victory. We have the ability to bond, which we've never done, but we could literally take out a loan, right? And pay for a project and kind of like shut ourselves down for a few years, right? As like every year, part of that funding is just now going to the loan that we took out, right? Like
that's why you don't do it.
Well, that's why, this group has a lot of flexibility, right? So I think a big part of it is trying to figure out what are the priorities in the community. I saw again and again through that, a lot of, hey, Hoyok's got like, that's why CPA is so broad, right? Like there's a lot going on here that we have to tackle, whether it's housing, whether it's open space and rec projects or historic preservation. So I definitely saw a lot of shout outs in there around public parks and access to our natural resources being a huge asset in our city that we want to keep supporting, right? We've already done that, right? Like we've been able to create the playscape down for the Boys and Girls Club. We gave $210,000 for the a big redo of Mayor Field, right? Like, I think we're going to keep having more parks come to us, right? We've done a lot for open space, right? And acquiring the land up in West Holyoke, right? And in the land that was purchased to extend the Scotts Tower land. So I think that, we're doing a lot of those things. And I think what we're hearing is keep doing them, right? Mary, what are you thinking?
Okay, so then if there's one specific thing that I heard from that, from the various results, is that the concept of that map would be a really good thing. What can we do to forward that?
I think so. Amy was working on it with somebody. Again, like, our biggest thing, and I felt there's a theme, right? It's that, like, the city of Holyoke has really high turnover, right? So, like, we will start working on something with someone, and then, like, they leave, right? And then it's like, okay, how do we pick that back up, right? So I know Amy was working on it like 2 years ago with somebody, and then they left. But then, Amy, you just said that you were kind of reopening it.
Yeah, well, there's a city intern who's a student who is sometimes available, and I just asked her to make me a collaborator so that she has started it off. So, when I get, it's hard finding time to do so many different things that I need to do, especially as projects keep accumulating and more changes are going. But definitely it has been on my radar, and I actually got access to what she started doing. So it can be added to and eventually added to the website.
Yeah, I think I would love that. And also, I just think there's a lot of information on the website if you're willing to dig. But I think especially, to make it more accessible to people, and also kind of people expect things to be visual now, right? It's just like a cultural shift. Like, they expect, one, it to look good, and two, it to be like accessible, and like click on stuff and you can get quick like sound bites, right? So I think anything that we can do to move in that direction is a really good idea. Mike, your hand is up.
Madam Chairman, I think it's an excellent idea. And I think visually is the way to go. That survey, the graphics of that survey answered that question. Mary and Amy, I think you're 100% correct. If we had, and I was going to ask you, Madam Chairman, if the committee members don't have no objection, that we ask Andrew, can we afford this year to hire a computer software guy or gal as a contractor to work with Amy and to have a map of the city? And by way of an example, where's the Victory Theater? That you would press it, and the project and the pictorial representation of the Victory Theater, or the stained glass window project, very briefly, that you could pictorially go to different parts of the city, like a map, and select a project, like, say, in fine print, City Hall restoration glass. You press that and a whole chapter opens up and describes it briefly with some pictures.
Yeah.
It beats me how you do it, but if you hired somebody that works for us to work with Amy, if we can afford it, that's a very excellent idea, because we live in a visual world of the computer, and I think that's a swell idea. It's worth pursuing if we can afford it.
We don't have to really pay for it. As I said, Mike, we already have this map in the works. It just needs more work on it to add the different locations of the projects and the links and so forth.
No,
I like his point though, that like, let's see how it goes, right? And if this intern can get it to a really great place, great. But like in 2 months, if it is where it is, it's incomplete, and then they're on to the next thing and they can't complete it. Like, I think it's a great idea to, like, if this can't be finished in a good way within the next 2 months, then let's pursue paying someone to do the work. I was also thinking that video is really important, right? And I could imagine at some point seeing value to looking at the administrative budget and seeing if there's enough money to hire someone to make a video encapsulating, like, here's what CPA has done, right, with the projects that have been completed, because I think a quick 2-minute video, right, would actually go really far in reaching a lot of people and getting out there what in fact we've accomplished. Yeah, Amy.
About the whole the video, actually, there was somebody from Holyoke Media. I'd have to dig. This was before the pandemic, who wanted to do a video about the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club project. I wonder if we could interest that person in doing just like you're talking about, like a general video that shows what CPA has done.
Yeah, reach
Maybe
out and let's
she was
see.
willing to do it for free. So just a thought.
Beautiful.
Even
Beautiful.
better.
Even better.
If you would reach out to them, that would be great.
Madam
Okay.
Chairman,
Yes,
Madam
yes.
Chairman, the only reason to hire somebody is to help Amy out, because as you pointed out, if it's a gal, a part-time student that's helping us out, that's fine, no cost. But after 2 months or so, if they graduate or if they move on to another project, Amy's stuck with the residue of what they've accomplished. However, if we can afford it, if you hire a professional computer guy or gal, here's your project, here's the starting date, here's the ending date, here's the money, we got our product, and we go from there. That's the only reason. I agree with you. Let's wait for 2 months, but let's not be, if we can afford it, let's leave it out there to hire somebody to help Amy out to qualify this and to produce a product.
But actually, Mike, it really does need me to do it because it's all set up now. There is a map. It's just that someone has to write out what belongs in. When people click on something, it has to have information written or a link to something. So that's not really something somebody from the outside could do.
Oh,
Sure.
okay. Well,
Amy,
so
do
be
you
it.
think that the next meeting you could bring whatever that draft looks like so that we can?
I mean, I can already show. I was just digging it up right now. I was trying to show it, but it's it gets confusing when I have so many windows open on my tiny laptop here. But I was going to try to show it to you what we have so far if you want me to try.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if it's easily accessible. If not, we
So
can prep it for next time.
I'm looking to see if I can open it. Yeah. Let's see.
Mary, just so you know, we're gonna we're not gonna do agenda item 6 because it's not needed. We already covered the piece around the MIFA project not getting full funding.
So here's just to give you an idea of what was started. You can see these are just different links showing just what we were talking about.
Well
Where
done.
these projects are at different points, but it just needs to have more information added. You know, this is just 21 and 20, and some things are incorrect or need to be changed, but it's already started here. And
What happens if you click on one of them? Like, is there information that pops up?
There's not much information yet. Let's see. It's just one of these things. Yeah, it's that just takes time, you know, figuring out what best to put here and add, and it's kind of new to me also. But or here's one for Lady Liberty. She added some information that she probably found, you know, in Wikipedia or something like that. But that's another thing. If you have good ideas for links for the projects, you know, you can also share that with me. For example, the Lady Liberty could go to an article about this, or it could go to the website where we have a complete description already of the project. You know, it can go right to, that probably makes the most sense to go right to the description of the Lady Liberty project that's on the website.
If I may, a photograph, like a small little, you know, thumb photo of what it is also kind of neat. And then beside it, maybe the text or, oh, there you go, add an image.
Yeah, there's a place to do that. It's just all a matter of just a lot of like really big things are still going on right now. And yes, I know this is important, but you know, it's also important that projects get their funding and that I put in requisition orders so people can be paid, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well done. Well done.
So some things that came out of it is effectively, we just need to keep getting better at honing our message to the community. I think we just have to keep finding new ways to connect, right? So whether that's, you know, figuring out like what are 3 or 4 events over the course of the year where it makes sense for us to have a table, right? And one of us is sitting at it, like, hi, I'm a CPA member, ask me a question, right? Or doing an informal gathering at the senior center, right? Where we know, there'll be folks who want to be asked their opinions, or whatever those forums are. I just think we have to keep talking about, like, how are we connected with the community and how are we getting people's thoughts about what they want us to spend this funding on. Anyone else want to say anything else? Mary?
Can I ask just for the minutes? Amy said something about Holyoke Media and that there was a person that could potentially. Is that something that will be done? Is somebody going to look into that between now and next meeting? I just want to finish whatever was discussed there.
I think Amy said she would reach out to the person at Holyoke Media.
I will try, but I can't promise with all the other, like, really strong priorities. But and I don't know if this person wants to do that, but it's just that I remembered that she was interested in doing a video in the past.
Well, if you end up finding her email, you can always forward it to me, and I don't mind following.
Yeah, I don't really even remember her name because it was such a while ago, but I can dig through my email to try to find it.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. All right, so we're moving to agenda item 8. I'd like us to discuss the idea of creating a contract review subcommittee, a group of folks who would be willing to take on the burden of looking at contracts, versus them having to be gone line by line over here. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to create a committee where folks can look at the contracts, and I have a motion for that. So here's what I was thinking. So a motion to establish a contract review subcommittee with a chair of the subcommittee and at least one other member, a staffer, Amy Landau, who would review all contracts with the support of the city solicitor's office, determining all questions within their purview, such as determining that the contract meets the terms voted on by the CPC or the city council and any other established precedents, and then remanding other questions with possible solutions to the CPC in regular meetings. So that's what I'm hoping for. And the reason why is because I think if we all remember back to the awfulness that was the prior meeting, how long that meeting took, as we went like line by line through contract after contract. It's a lot, right? And so I think it might make more sense for it to be reviewed by a subcommittee, and then brought here for anything that really needs our attention. So any thoughts about that, Michael?
I have a small candidate. Chip would make a wonderful chairman of the contract committee. He's a hell of a guy, honest, hardworking, and he'll do a heck of a job.
I'm seeing so much enthusiasm, Kip. He's like, don't make me do it.
I mean, it raises another issue for me, which is that I think my term is about up.
What? No.
Yeah.
When? I thought you had a whole other year.
No, I think so. So we can look at that. Amy, can you, I don't know how you check on it, because my initial term was 1 year, and then I got reappointed for 3 years, but I think there was like a year gap in between, the reappointment. So I'm not sure what the effective date is, but I believe this is the end of year 5 for me. And so the most I could be reappointed, if that's true, is for 1 more year, because 6 is the maximum for city council appointees. And I don't know how much sense it makes for me to be appointed for a 1 year term. It might make more sense for there to be a new member with a full 3 year term. So that's why I'm hesitating to take on any responsibilities right now, because I think I may be close to done.
Mm-hmm. Michael, would you be willing to chair it if Kip's not?
Madam Chairman, if you so desire, yes, I will.
I feel like you
I was
are really
hoping Kip
good at
would, because-
catching things in contracts. Like, I appreciate that about you.
Well, no, Madam Chairman, if that's your will and the will of the board, certainly, I would like to have Kip because of his knowledge and experience with contracts. But if Kip, if you find out that you have 6 months left or a half a year left, well, I don't blame you. Why do it? So upon clarification of that, I'd be happy to chair it, Madam Chairman, with help. And hopefully Kip can be with us for another year or two, I hope. But anyway, that's to answer your question. Yes.
I also think that there may be other folks who are not here that then also want to join us in the subcommittee too.
Yeah.
Amy, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, I'm looking at Kip's term ending, and it says November 2021. So he's right.
Fitting.
Wait, this is your last meeting. You weren't kidding. You were like, jazz hands, I'm out.
Amy, can he be reappointed, or is the cycle over? To your knowledge.
So
I thought he was already reappointed. Isn't that right?
So this, I think, is 5 years. The maximum is 6, but I don't think it makes sense to just reappoint me for 1 year, and then then reappoint somebody else or appoint someone else for a 3-year term a year from now. So, but I do believe, and I don't know why I don't know if it's in the rules, but I think I can serve until someone else is appointed. So I don't think it's like done today out.
Okay.
But I think it's time to consider that reality in a transition. And, and I think we're losing other members too, right? I mean, and we have a new administration and a new city council that's starting in January. And so it probably makes sense for them to, select their own city council representative on the CPA. So I think that that's allowed and appropriate to, and I'm certainly willing to do that, to participate until someone else is appointed within some reasonable period of time. I don't want to go through next summer.
Well, but I hope that you will stay on until we can find someone else.
I think that's allowed, and I'm more than willing to do that. I don't want to leave you or leave the committee without enough members, because, we didn't make a quorum last meeting. We barely made one this one. So, that's 5 of us out of 9, right? There's like 4 members that aren't here.
Mm-hmm.
Or 4 potential members anyway. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to go 5 out and then you only have 4, active members. I'm happy to continue to serve on the committee but I wasn't planning on talking about this, but when you start talking about, making me the chair of a contract subcommittee, I didn't feel like that was no, that wouldn't make any sense at all at this point. So.
Okay. Yes, and I know that Francesca Nunez is here, and she and I've been talking about her applying as a community representative, and I hope she will.
Yeah, I was just talking about that. It's kind of exciting. I'm interested.
We're excited to have your voice, so we're excited that you're here and stuck with us even after that awful contract meeting.
Francesca, are you a new member?
She's working on applying to be a community representative.
Oh, okay.
Woo.
And there's 3 of those, is that right?
Yeah, so it would be me, Francesca, and then you.
Well, but who's the 3rd right now?
You and me are too, and the third spot is open, which is why Francesca has been attending to see if she wants to apply.
Okay, so who was it that's not, who was it that, we had a full 9.
It was Rick Dominguez for
Oh,
a period of time, and then I think it was Andrew before.
before that, right. And Elaine.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so that's all. Just
Yeah.
make
Okay.
sure. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. You know that
Thank you.
they're
I
really,
appreciate you.
they're really 2 openings on.
I had no idea too. We had quite some time. All right. Well, thank you for the heads up, and thank you for sticking around.
Stick around as long as I'm needed.
All right. So I would love to create a subcommittee to look at contracts with Michael Falsetti as chair. Is there anyone else that's willing to step up as a member for now of the subcommittee to review contracts? If not, I can do it with Amy and Michael. And then we'll reach out to the other folks as well to see if anyone else wants to do it.
So you
Okay.
can take a motion.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to establish a contract subcommittee. With
Second?
All right. Any discussion further? Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Last meaty piece, and then we get to look at eligibility really quick. Preservation restrictions for non-acquisitions. And I'm wondering if it makes sense to create a funding threshold under which we would not require it to allow projects that are coming in for smaller historic preservation work to not have to have a preservation restriction. So this would, for example, connect to projects like the Holyoke merry-go-round. If we set a funding threshold of underneath $30,000, we would not expect a preservation restriction for the work. I'm wondering how folks feel about this and if it's something that we could vote on. It's the second time I'm bringing it up. So I don't think the merry-go-round project's going to happen. If we don't find a way to like allow them to move forward without a preservation restriction. There's just a lot of anxiety on their board. You know, they're a private entity, even if they're a nonprofit, and they're just the idea that like someone could tell them what they could and couldn't do with their property is really anxiety producing. You know, they're not like other applicants who are coming in really used to restrictions, right? Or who are asking for a lot of money, and so they get it. That we're asking for a return on investment to protect it. So I don't know what folks think. And if I don't get a great answer, then I'll just say, okay, this is not it. And I'll go back to the merry-go-round and I'll tell them, you just will have to have a preservation restriction if you want to move forward with this project and get this funding. And that can be okay, that that's the precedent that we're setting, and we're setting a clear policy on it. But I want to go back one more time and see, is this something that we are interested in pursuing for projects like the merry-go-round? Mary?
I have a question and a comment. One, the question is, can we ask Stuart Saginaw or somebody from that CPA group coalition, is it okay to do that? That's the first thing.
Use like
And
clawback.
What?
So there's a lot of CPAs that don't use preservation restrictions and instead use a clawback. Like if you ever sold the project, you would have to return a certain percentage of your investment back to the city. You know, that kind of mechanism, I don't think makes any sense for an entity like a nonprofit like this. Like they're not going to turn and sell the merry-go-round. But yeah, there's lots of different CPA communities that do things differently, that either use PRs or don't under a certain percentage or threshold, or who use clawbacks or some other mechanism.
Okay, well, the second part of what I was going to say is a comment, and that is, if there are already controls in place, you know, rules that they have to follow already, then in that case, I'm in favor of putting a threshold in that says below which they wouldn't have to have an additional preservation or, you know, stipulations by us.
According to my conversations with the board, there is no oversight that they currently feel they have, or regulations they feel they have to comply with. That's their perception, right? Then that might not be true. That's their perception. And I think that's why they're so anxious about the preservation restriction. But I think that we absolutely can put a statement in the contract, right? Or in a memorandum of understanding that they would have to continue to make the Holyoke merry-go-round in keeping with the standards of the Department of the Interior over time.
That's all you, Madam Chairman, that's all you need. I can't believe, as I said before in our last meeting, excuse me for interrupting. Do you think the state of Massachusetts is going to give the City of Holyoke merry-go-round group 30 years ago $500,000 and say, look, here it is, no problem? I find that hard to believe. I think if you look back to the original contracts 30 years ago, whenever it was erected, and they gave them the land for no charge, I don't think they did that and say, oh, you can do whatever you want. I think there's a hell of a lot of restrictions that are on the books that that they don't realize. I don't think the state of Massachusetts is going to give land and money and say a blank check, spend it the way you want. I find that hard to believe. I think there's a lot of regulations that are on them that they simply don't realize. They ought to look up at their
also
own.
Just a good faith partner. I think we can look at their history, right? They've been operating for 30 years. And they've been doing it underneath the guidelines. So I feel like there's lots of reasons to feel okay about moving forward with it. But and maybe this is this one case. And maybe we only vote to not require a PR in this case. And we don't make it about a policy or a precedent that would apply to more. Maybe we just say in this one case, we don't feel like we would need to require a PR.
No, I don't think we do.
Marco, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, on an as needed basis, can we have that ability? If we feel like it's on an as needed basis, if it's appropriate, let's do it. Doesn't it cost money to do the preservation restriction for the? Yeah, so I mean, we want to help out and we want to be reasonable. And I think maybe there will be other applicants like the merry-go-round that we feel that's appropriate here. So I would be in agreement to maybe do it on a case by case basis, maybe below a certain amount. We can set an amount. Thanks.
Amy?
Just my one concern about saying, well, okay, we'll decide to not require it. I mean, for the committee to decide not to require it for one applicant and not another is that you could be charged with being unfair. If you don't have a standard. That's why the threshold idea would make a clear standard that
would the planning board being sued for being arbitrary.
No.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
No.
Are you thinking about like the recent case of the planning board being sued because they're claiming?
I wasn't really thinking about that in particular, but I mean, I guess that's true. You could cite that. I mean, because people want to see that there's a transparent process, and that if they're applying, they're treated, with the same fairness as somebody else. So that's why doing a threshold at least makes it clear across the board that it's the same for everyone.
Well, I'd love just a quick thought of if folks want to do it based on a threshold or folks want to do it based on a case-by-case basis, just for the merry-go-round. I'm comfortable with either. Kip?
Case-by-case basis.
Okay, Kip?
So, one of the things that I've come to really appreciate about the CPA program is the flexibility of the program and the ability of the committee members to take all of these factors into consideration in making decisions on things like preservation restrictions. So that was one point. The other point I think I would make is that even if the committee were to vote a threshold, right, here tonight and say whatever the number is, make up a number, $50,000, anything below that, we're not going to require it. But a project were to come in front of the committee for $51,000, the committee would still have the authority to vote and waive that $50,000 threshold and allow 51 for a project, say like the merry-go-round. So,
okay.
Yeah, I think that I would strongly recommend that you deal with these on a case-by-case basis. In dollars is only one aspect of it. I think it's, is it something like that can be moved, like the merry-go-round, could you put that on a truck and haul it away, and
it's also something like how we chose to waive it for the fire truck, or we waive it for city properties in general.
That's one factor. And, then it's nonprofits and it's things that might have other restrictions on them that they would have to comply with. And there are probably 4 or 5 other variables that we could try to consider in coming up with like a carved in stone policy on preservation restrictions. And I think that, again, I would recommend that the committee not do that and just deal with these on a case-by-case basis. And, there isn't anybody on the committee that's trying to stick it to one entity or another. And, that's what you're here for, is to use your judgment on voting on these things. And I think that there's also, contract language is enforceable. If you say, without someone filing a deed restriction on their preservation, but the language says you shall not sell these horses, and they sell them, they're in breach of the contract. And there's probably an ability to go back and get your money back, right? They got their money and agreed to these 4 things, and then they didn't do those 4 things. You probably could litigate and get your money back. So,
okay.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of I think there certainly are appropriate places for a preservation restriction on a deed with projects that get funded that meet some criteria, but I don't think a blanket policy is required.
Okay. So am I hearing a motion to move forward with the merry-go-round contract while lifting the requirement for a preservation restriction?
I'll make that motion.
Madam Chair, could you say that again, please?
So a motion to proceed with the merry-go-round contract while lifting the requirement for a preservation restriction.
Second.
We can include language around requiring that they continue to make the merry-go-round in keeping with the standards over time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, love it. Okay, last piece is eligibility, and then other, if there are random things people need to share. So for eligibility, interesting, I know I already said this before, that we don't have any housing applications. We only have historic and open space and recreation projects that came forward in this cycle. And there's some budgetary stuff going on, right? So for example, we have the MIFA funding will return to the CPA coffers unencumbered because of the letter that Don Sanders sent. So that means there's that money that comes back into the CPA budget. And then the state match this year was wild. It was way higher than in previous years. It was the highest ever. So, in effect, when we look at everything, Andrew is going to, who has been doing the budget for us, is going to do a formal, report for us with some slides we can look at next meeting. But we're potentially looking at having, close to $1 million, which is very high, much higher than we had expected. There's one little caveat, right, which is that we have to spend 10% in each category, and we don't have any housing applications. So that means that we will not be able to touch around $95,000, right? That will be moved forward into the housing category for the next funding cycle. But that still means that we'll have around $900,000 to be able to suggest funding to City Council. A state match this year was, thank you, Amy, for sending that to me, $214,687. So that's awesome. So, let's look at them really quickly. And then in our next meeting, we'll dive into a process to start just getting to know the applications a little better. and figuring out what we're going to do in order to figure out as a group how we are going to recommend funding. The last piece that I'll say about funding is that because we expected a lower number, because we projected it based on last year's state match, it's possible that there's part of the money that we won't have access to until after July 1 because of how the budgeting process works. I'm not worried so much about that because projects have taken so long to get off the ground. And I don't feel like it's going to be a problem. I'm like, sure, there's going to be a few projects that don't end up being fully funded and like ready to go and looking for invoices to be paid before July 1. But that is something that we'll have to keep administratively on our radar. Okay, Amy, could you share your screen so we can quickly just look at the eligibility applications that came in?
Okay.
And just as a recap, these applications were, simple applications coming in with sometimes just a bare bones idea and a funding request saying, here's the kind of project I would like, here's the category I think it's in, and is my project eligible, right? Like, should I put my time into creating a really detailed application and ask for full funding? So Amy will be contacting all of the applicants in order to tell them, yes, it's eligible, or no, it is not, underneath the legislation.
Okay, so this is historic, and I believe there's seven project. These are just eligibility forms. So this is not the application. Remember, this is just to, let us know that they want, they're interested and they're seeking, eligibility. So I don't know if you want, do you want me to go through what each one is or what?
Yeah, I think just quickly stating the name of the project and how much it is and just generally what it is. Even just a 20-second soundbite on each.
Okay, so the first is the Girls Inc. Headquarters and Program Center at 480 Hampden Street for $150,000. So this is with their potential request. They could change it in the full application. It's the restoration of the building envelope, and there are bricks literally falling off the building. There's water damage, so it's a pretty severe situation. And they do have other fundraising campaign going on. Then there's the train station at 12 Bower Street for $150,000. This would be a complete restoration of the building and detached baggage annex. And they've already begun some preliminary work on that. The New England Farm Workers Council at 225 High Street for $325,000. It's the exterior, interior, and mechanical system restorations. And they even broke down some details about, as you can see here, about where things might be spent. And this project was previously presented to the acting mayor during ARPA for round one. And the building use would go towards various activities serving the Latino community. Then there's the stained glass windows restoration, phase 4. We're all familiar with. This is for $160,000. And it would be the restoration of windows 1 and 2 in the City Hall ballroom. And these windows are currently in storage. As they clearly said, there are 5 remaining windows to restore after these 2, with an estimated cost of $350,000. So it's still a many-phase project. Then there's repainting the Wisteria House Museum for $100,000. The main house hasn't been painted for 12 years and the carriage house 13 years. So this helps to preserve the structure. The restoration of Lady Liberty Monument, War Memorial Commission, $60,000 to restore the monument according to the study, which would work on the inscriptions, which are hard to see at all, and add lighting. So you already heard Mike discuss that and how they have this money, but they have a limited period of time to use it. So it would have to, if that was approved, it would have to move quickly. Then there's the MIFA Victory Theater Sconces, which is the proposal it's a movable temporary exhibition. And it's sort of unclear what exactly Don Sanders has in mind, but it would be $100,000. It seemed like he was saying that maybe these sconces could be restored and added to the display of the murals in the ballroom. But I have a lot of questions about it because I don't know, if they would have to be wired or whether that's been discussed with Bob Parent, because that would be pretty costly to do. But the sconces are historically significant, according to the Holyoke Historical Commission. And those are, okay. And then there was a form also from MIFA for the Mountain Park ticket booth. Now this has been tabled. This is for $50,000 that the Holyoke Historical Commission has tabled this one for a number of reasons. So this is not eligible at this point because what they want to do is have it put on a movable platform and, pulled around by a trailer on display with LED lights. And it's currently not owned by MIFA either. It's stored in Northampton. So there's a lot of questions about that one and whether that's, so that one right now, at least for the present, is not eligible. But all the others you're seeing are eligible. This is the open space. We only got historic and open space. So the first one is a bronze tablet for a parks project. This is a small grant that would honor Maria Miranda on the basketball. It would honor, Maria Miranda in Ely Park in the Flats for $3,000. She was a role model, and her life was cut short by violence in Holyoke. So that this is something that they want to do. And then Jones Point Park rehabilitation for just $275,000. This would include the park. Actually, this is something you should be familiar with because it's the same basic project that they applied for in the past. The park would include tennis courts, baseball diamonds, soccer field. They need input, though, from the residents to find out specifics of what they would do. Then there's the Miracle League of Western Massachusetts, a playground for all for $375,000. They want to create a playground, a new playground for children of all abilities, which would be ADA accessible and multi-sensory. They've already raised $100,000 towards this project, and they have a budget laid out. Then there's the Scott Tower Anniversary Hill Park Phase 2 from the Conservation Commission, which you're familiar with, $200,000. This would be to restore Anniversary Hill Park and Scott Tower. Phase 2 will apply for grants for landscape design, engineering, and construction. I think that this one, as I remember, would involve repairing the trails and working with an organization called Green Agers, where they hire. I'm sorry. I'm talking now about the next one. It's what I said, just restoring Anniversary Hill Park and working on the design. But the next one, Glue Tech Woods Trail, which was already acquired by the city through CPA, they're asking for $45,000. Again, this is Yoni at the Conservation Commission, and this one is because they need trail maintenance and wetland crossings added, as well as kiosk construction, invasive species removal, etc. And what's interesting is this would be in partnership with Green Agers, which is a 501c3 that hires high school students, local high school students, to be trained and do this work. So it would be a really that's an interesting project. So because the majority of the funding would stay in the community for that one. And here I just have just to show you the total potential requests from the historic applicants might be up to this amount, over $1 million, and even a little more for open space, nothing for housing, and the total ask could come to over $2 million.
Very cool.
Can I close that, or does anybody have a question about these?
Amy, the one that I printed or that you sent did not have the other Kennedy School playground or the ones at the bottom of the list. The worksheet that you sent did not have like 4 or 5 of the last ones you were referring to. So that's
under the which open space.
Yeah, with the I forget the names of them now.
Or the historic.
The last group of open space, the 4 or 5.
Greenagers.
Yeah,
Right.
stuff like that.
Is it possible you just didn't print the whole thing out?
Yeah,
But
it could be. I thought this was it though, but that could be. Yeah, maybe I didn't.
I can send you, I think that you can still access it online because I have you, I have your email here, and I can also copy the link right now in the chat for you.
Okay, I don't know what that means, but if you could just give me a copy of that full report you just did and mail it to me or email it to me, that would be terrific.
Mike, you just warmed my heart. You're like, I'm not going to look in the chat.
Well, okay. I just put it in the chat for you, Mike, but okay, I can email it to you again.
Beautiful.
Yeah. All right, Kip has his hand up.
Was there something at the bottom of the list about the YMCA?
Did I miss? You're right. I think I may have missed something. Let me go back.
Is that the parking lot that was the Farr Mansion?
I did miss the YMCA. I'm sorry about that. Let me reopen this. I mean, I was on there, but I didn't. Do you see it? The YMCA childcare play space. So this is also one that you might remember from before. To up for 200,000. It is basically the same project to update existing green space to include the toddler playground and green space for free play. So yeah, this was originally they came before the committee. So sorry that I forgot to mention them.
No problem. Thank you.
And that's eligible.
Yeah, every single project, as far as I can see, is eligible right now, except for the ticket booth, the MIFA ticket booth.
So I have two questions, Amy. By what point will you communicate eligibility or not to each applicant? And then when are the full applications due this year?
Yeah, I think I'm going to tell them right away as soon as I can that they are eligible, and send the full application out to, at the beginning of the month and of next month. And then they have to the end of December to complete it, to submit it.
Okay. So
yeah, and all the historic applicants have been in touch. The ones that needed letters have gotten in touch with Richard Alstrom, the chair of the Holyoke Historical Commission. And they have one more meeting though. So, for example, MIFA could try again to find out what their decision is on that with their last on December 8th, I think.
Okay. So that means that the full applications would not be due until the end of December?
Right.
Okay. So here's my question then. So given that, we have really two things on our radar. One is contracts and moving existing projects forward. And then the other thing on our radar is going to be then going into the full applications and figuring out how are we going to score them effectively? Like, what's our process to figure out how we go about figuring out which to fund and which not to fund, right? Like as has happened in the last few years, right? We have way more asks than money. So what does it look like for us to make some tough choices and prioritize? So I'm wondering if it makes sense to have a meeting in December where we just spend time quickly kind of going through existing projects and doing anything we need to do, and then just talking about that process. And then in January is effectively when we would have the public meeting is what we've done in the past, right? Like we've had applicants come in and be able to pitch their projects, right? They have a very short slide deck. They have to say, here's my project. Here's why I think you should fund my project. And we get the opportunity to interact with them and ask questions, but so do members of the public. It seems to me like meetings seem to be staying on Zoom. So it seems to me like it's likely that meeting will also be on Zoom, although that's a question that I have. But I think that in terms of kind of having a sense of where we're going, it seems more like January would be that we would usually have two meetings, right? We would have one where we hear from all of the historic and one where we hear from all of the open space and rec. And then in February, we would start deliberating and deciding which projects we're funding. Does that process feel okay to folks? Any questions or anything you want me to think about as we're trying to figure out this timeline of the process?
Well, we don't want to meet December 25th or 24th either.
30.
Yes. Okay. So would it make sense for us to meet earlier in December? Hi, baby. I'll be up to say goodnight. Sorry, my little one. Okay. So would we want to meet early December, like the December 8th?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So December 8th at 6 p.m. to basically review any new contracts, moving existing projects along, and then talking a bit about process for determining eligibility or any logistics that we have to figure out for inviting the applicants in January. Okay. All right. So that concludes everything that I have. We'll move to other. Is there anything that folks need to say in the other category? Amy, did you have something you wanted to mention?
Oh, yeah.
It was just about the budget, Madam Chairman. As when we started the meeting, I couldn't figure out, I mean, I'm sure Andrew's got this down to the penny, but I couldn't figure it out myself. If we have an estimated budget of $729,872, and we've got essentially $693,000 to spend, I don't know how we arrived at 693 from the 729.
I can tell you.
Oh, go ahead. Sure.
Well, just that I think that was because of having to just, thinking about how many the funds that are available for projects versus the funds that are set aside for admin for my salary and at just the 5%. The other thing that's a little tricky about the budget is that was the budget that was approved, which I was going to announce at the last meeting by City Council. And it's always a projected budget, as Meg was mentioning. So, it's just a little unclear, whether the committee can commit funds before the whole budget, like the new funds, this new infusion of the state match and all that has been approved as part of the budget officially by City Council. So
Elaine Pluto, the former chair, believed that we could, and that was just part of the regular budgeting process. But also to my point that I said earlier, I have never seen every project be completed and fully funded and for invoicing before July 1. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I just
so
find
we'll be
it
in the next calendar year anyway for most of the projects.
Of doing the projected budget and getting it approved, because I know that there was a time when there was a state match, and this was with Elaine, where we weren't able to spend the whole state match until the subsequent year. So I guess it's something I need to discuss with Andrew when he gets in touch with me.
For sure, and I know he's working on it too.
Forgive me, Madam Chair. Is it all possible for the Lady Liberty project, because the clock is ticking for me, and is it legal or possible to get it approved, the Lady Liberty project to get approved, only because if we miss the FY 2022 cycle, we lose $50,000. And for that reason and that reason only, is it legal or possible?
The funding has to be committed in fiscal year 22, right? Which is
I have to spend the $50,000 FY22. I got to spend it now, and if I don't, it goes back to the state. And
when you say now, Mike, just clarify. Do you mean by this January 1st or next?
This fiscal year.
So you mean by June of
yes
of next year, you need to have that money
spent. It's got to be out of my wallet and gone.
That would be hard.
I think the reality, the reality is this, right? The things that have slowed everything down, contracts, right? So, Amy has stepped in. I don't know how aware folks are of she's been stepping in to I will take a template. I will start figuring out how this would look like. I will give a draft that's 90% there to the law department and say, is this it? Can we move forward? So that we can start moving things along, right? So I think the contracts piece has been the problem. Really nothing else. As long as you have your vendor ready to go, Mike, and you're ready to go. Like, the thing that will be the issue will be the contract. So we start reviewing, projects in February, right? Like, we can start voting in our first February meeting. And as long as the contract's ready to go, you can go immediately. But unless there's a way to move it forward in the emergency application, I don't think there's anything in our ordinances that allow us to take a project out of cycle. But I'll look more into it and see if we are.
Sure.
Kip.
Well, you just touched on what I was thinking is, why not an emergency application? We did that with wayfinders. So
yeah, it depends. If it's an emergency application, then we're allowed to take it out of.
Right.
Yeah, that's precisely what it is. Thank you, Kip. That's precisely what it is.
Submit an emergency application. You can vote on that at the next meeting, and then, then you're able to get funded and get the $50,000 match and spend it by the spring, by June 30th. Because if you wait for recommendations in February, March, and then contract for a month or two, and then public procurement process for a month or two, you're past June 30th. So
that's what I'm afraid of.
So I think you can, but
you should consider it.
Well, I want to do it. I mean, forgive me for taking up the time of the committee, but Amy, could I meet with or talk with you on how?
Yeah, I was just thinking that what I could do is try to send you your application as soon as possible, if this is an emergency application, so you could start working on it.
Yeah, I'll get it done right away and get it right back to you, because $50,000 is a lot of money. It's half the budget.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Yes, if you could do that, Amy.
Okay, anything else that we need to announce or tackle before we close? I know we're running out. I need to go do bedtime.
The only thing I wanted to add is that I did look on the coalition website, and it really does have to be an acquisition of using CPA funding. So in other words, CPA funding buying something of real property, interest for, the city, in order for a permanent restriction or perpetual restriction to be required.
Well, that's good news. Okay, so we're still okay with the Jackson Street project.
Yeah, I mean, at least that's my understanding when I look at it.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
Sorry for the confusion.
It's okay.
I wish I could say that I did not often experience that myself, but it's not the truth. I do all the time. All right. Thank you, everyone. This was a really good meeting. I appreciate all of you. And I'm looking forward to starting to delve more into the final applications and looking into new projects. It's like Christmas for CPA people. All right. Thank everyone. And
thank you, Meg.
Adjourn.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, our next meeting is December 8th at 6 o'clock. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And who moved to adjourn?
I did.
Okay.
Favor.
And I seconded it if we need a second.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night, everyone.
And thank you all. Good night. Bye now.
Good night, everybody.